Okay, great. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the September 2021 meeting of the Gender Equity Commission. For those of you who are watching us live on YouTube or listening, welcome and thank you for being with us. We are going to go ahead and get started. My name is Mandini Trower. I am the chair of the Gender Equity Commission, and I'm a little under the weather. So to spare myself and everyone with us watching and present, I am going to keep my video off today. Welcome, and let's go ahead and get started. And so I want to thank Judy for graciously agreeing to take notes for today's meeting. And Judy, given the number of commissioners who are not going to be here, rather than going through and doing the full roll call, we'll just note those who are here with us today. Of course, Commissioner Hale, you are present. Everyone, if that's okay.
Yes, I'm present.
Commissioner Lyon is with us. Hello. Commissioner Manuel is present. I see Commissioner Ramey. Hello. Commissioner Schultz is with us as well. I did hear from Commissioner Gross is joining us. Wonderful. And then Commissioner Hanson, Commissioner Higginbotham, Commissioner Overton, and I know the three of them reached out to me. They are not able to make it for various reasons. Oh, and Commissioner Davidson also reached out. So they will not be joining us today for various reasons. Some people are under the weather. Some people had other obligations that they were conflicting today. And so there are a limited number of us, but that is okay. We are going to move forward. And so just very quickly, we are still without a secretary. And so in the meantime, until or unless anyone nominates or steps forward, I am asking for commissioners to volunteer on a rolling basis to take the meeting minutes during our meetings. Right now, that is the most pressing thing. We would love to have a fifth person on the executive committee, for various reasons, especially in the event, just for accountability, et cetera. However, what's really important is we need to make sure that we stay in compliance and are taking a proper record. What is good about the fact that we are recording and on YouTube is that whoever does take the minutes, if you miss anything, you can always watch the video and take notes. So Commissioner Hale has graciously agreed to do that today. And so moving forward, whoever would like to volunteer, we basically have October and November left. And then December, we have kind of, we've kind of gone back and forth whether or not we have December meetings, and we can make that decision. But basically, we only have up to 3 meetings left in the year. So if 3 people step forward, that means that each person only has to commit to taking notes for 1 meeting. So no one has to say anything now, especially because there's only half of you here, so no pressure. But if anyone wants to volunteer for October, just email me and let me know. And again, if anyone would like to be on the executive committee for the remainder of our year, please let myself and Commissioner, is it Coffee Lion or Lion?
It's coffee for these purposes.
Oh, excuse me. Okay, so thank you. So Commissioner Coffee, so if you would please reach out to Commissioner Coffee if you would like to be secretary. But if you would just like to volunteer in the meantime to take meeting minutes, just email me directly and let me know. So that's really all that we have. Does anybody have any questions about the minutes, secretary? August, we had our retreat. And I just, our meeting was essentially 5 minutes of me just giving a recap update to everyone. So really didn't have a meeting for minutes. So the only minutes that we really would need to vote on is July. So and of course we don't have enough people to vote on that, but we certainly want to make sure that we do vote on that to get that into the official record for the October meeting. And so we'll make sure that everyone has a copy of those minutes for that meeting. Does anybody have any questions about that? Okay. All right. So we didn't get a chance, commissioners did not get a chance to submit reports ahead of today's meeting. And so I was hoping to get a brief report out. We do know that, of course, Commissioner Manuel and the Workforce Equity team has some things to share, but I wanted to give folks an opportunity just to kind of quickly share what their committees have been up to with everyone. And so governance and leadership, Commissioner Coffey, any updates to report out to the commission?
The only update that we have, hello everyone. The only update that we have is that we are going to reflect and consider the feedback given at our working retreat last month. And there were some thoughts around our governing guidelines, guiding principles document that folks wanted to include into a new document. So we are compiling that feedback and looking to present it to the entire commission at the next commission meeting.
That's awesome. And I also quickly want to give another shout out to the Governance and Leadership Committee for an incredible retreat, and especially Commissioner Coffey, for your the incredible facilitation of that meeting. It was really wonderful, and putting that together for us. It was time certainly well spent and much appreciated to you all. And that sounds absolutely wonderful. Anybody have any questions for the Governance and Leadership Committee on that? Okay, great. So gender analysis. So unfortunately, both Commissioners Hansen and Higginbotham are out today. Commissioner Schultz, any updates from the Gender Analysis Committee to share out?
So I think that the last meeting, we did have a meeting. I wasn't there. I think Judy, Commissioner Hill was there. Okay. So you might be able to give a better summary than I can. But my understanding is that the desire is to eventually move forward with some kind of climate survey involving City of Pittsburgh employees. But and I think the idea was discussed to have maybe a Coro fellow or someone involved in that process, but that's not in the budget right now. So we're kind of just waiting to see what the resources will be to carry out a survey of that nature. Commissioner Hale, is there anything that should be added to that?
I believe that you captured the summary of that meeting very well. And thank you, considering that you were not able to be there. I really appreciate.
I read my email, but yes.
Good job.
Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Any questions for that? Yes, Commissioner Ramey.
Sarah, Judy, I don't know if you could answer this, but are we moving away from then a community-based participatory research design study, or is this climate survey sort of what we had been discussing last year?
So it's my understanding, it's not what we were discussing last year. The issue that we've run into consistently is with resources and the ability to fully fund a community-based portion in the way that would do it justice. Hasn't really, especially with COVID, been an opportunity for us to explore. When we did get very close by putting out the last RFP, nobody was a really good match for the work in a way that I think we felt it would make sense to move forward. We were kind of replicating a lot of the past mistakes if we would have moved forward with that. So the decision was in committee conversations to switch gears a little bit. because it would still be in compliance with the ordinance to do a survey that was more internal about climate survey at the city level for city employees, and then kind of wait to see how the community-based piece potentially plays out, mostly with funding. It's mostly a funding issue at this point.
To kind of follow up with that, the survey, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, that the survey, I believe, is in part because this is the internal city workforce phase. And so there's a much greater control and ability in terms of who is captured and how it's captured versus, as we know, the challenges of a survey when we do the community focus, where we're trying to gather community input. So because it was the workforce, there's much greater chance of getting the sampling that we need to better represent the full city or the intersections needed. So I believe that is the reason why they decided to move forward with the survey, in addition to everything that was just said.
Yeah, and also I think that it was discussed that it would be a great opportunity for the incoming administration to potentially get a sense of what some of the issues internally are, and what some of the strengths are, because the climate survey doesn't just criticize, but brings to light some things that are being done well. So we also thought it would be a really great opportunity to collect some data about general climate across gender and race at the city level. So that's kind of how the conversations have been going.
Great, thank you so much. Anyone else have any questions for the Gender Analysis Committee? Okay, I appreciate you both for stepping up and giving us that update. Okay, Commissioner Manuel, we know that you have some really great and exciting updates from the Workforce Equity Committee.
Thank you. And yes, we do have some exciting information, and that is, last November, we had kicked off the fact of the work that this Workforce Equity Committee had been working on for the previous 2 years. And we focused on closing the pay gap, the gender pay gap in Greater Pittsburgh. And so we have that very special partnership with AAUW, American Association of University Women. And what is great that will occur starting tomorrow evening, September 22nd, and then every other week thereafter, we will be having our Work Smart training shops virtual. And we are inviting any and everyone to attend this respective training. It is only 1 hour, 5 p.m. until 6 p.m. every other Wednesday, starting tomorrow, which is September 22nd. And then, of course, we'll have the following October 6th, October 20th, November 3rd, November 17th, and then we finalize on December 1st, wrapping up our training sessions for the year of 2021. And then we'll kick off the training again in 2022. Again, this helps with our respective objective from the research and the paperwork that we've done for this Workforce Equity Committee, and to help us achieve our goal of training 7,500 women within a 5-year time period. We would love to exceed that number, and we hope that we do. And I know that shortly, we will be having some special guests join us as they will be talking about the work that they have done and how we, as the City of Pittsburgh Gender Equity Commission, specifically the Workforce Equity Committee, will be partnering with them on their objectives and how they will be partnering to service and support us in this endeavor. This is just the first step in the process. We know that there are other aspects that we are going to implement, But for the remainder of 2021, our goal is to have 7 Work Smart shops completed, which will help us work toward training 7,500 women within a 5-year time period, which that is part of our goal from the respective program as outlined. So I want to say thank you to all of my fellow commissioners who have shared the information and have invited individuals. And if they were not able to make the training that is scheduled for tomorrow evening, there will be another one every other week, just 1 hour. And so we definitely encourage, for anyone in the community that is watching and listening, we encourage you to go on the City of Pittsburgh Gender Equity Commission website or webpage. And there's information there that you'll be able to register and partake in this endeavor. Enhance your KSAs, as I like to say, your knowledge, your skills and abilities to help us close this gender pay wage gap that has existed long enough. And we want to make sure that we stamp it out and hope that it never exists ever again. That's my positive thinking. That's my positive vibes on that one. We're going to address it. We're going to stamp it out and not have it occur again. But shortly, we will be having our respective special guests join us if they're not already in the waiting room.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Emanuel. And I do want to thank everyone who has shared the information. I know Commissioner Ramey has been very diligent about trying to form partnerships and make sure that, you know, folks in her respective circles and university participate, and, you know, not just for the education, but also to support these efforts. And so I want to thank everyone who has shared the information, has done so. Please, you know, there's a lot of people out in the community who have been interested in these workshops. So we definitely want to encourage you to have your folks join and participate in these training sessions. And of course, there will be opportunities for partnerships when hopefully we have live ones in 2022.
Mm-hmm.
So I do see that our guests are here. I would like to give Commissioner Hale an opportunity to share on the Pittsburgh for CEDAW report, and then we will move on to our special guests. And what we'll do is we'll come back to the new business after our guests present. So Commissioner Hale, please go ahead and give us a brief overview. Commissioner Hale did send me a report, and so I will send that out to the rest of the commission, but go ahead and give us a brief summary of your report.
Thank you so much, Chairperson Nietrauer. I appreciate it. So the Pittsburgh and Allegheny for CEDAW group has been working, continuing to work on looking into the existing Allegheny County Gender Equity Ordinance, which is Article 1016, titled the Gender and Race Equity Audit. And I can provide the link to that as well. We are now also that audit asked for a report in 2010 and every 5 years thereafter. We have identified a report from 2015. We're still looking to see if there are additional reports. Obviously, it would be understandable if the 2020 report wasn't issued because of the pandemic, but we are also working now. We have made arrangements to have a University of Pittsburgh graduate student in the School of Public and International Affairs work as an internship with her professor. Our intern has just completed a summer as a junior researcher intern in gender equality and public administration with the United Nations Development Program. So we are working with her to study the 2015 report, the Allegheny County Gender and Race Equity Audit, which is also available online. Our current goal is to develop next steps and recommendations for how Allegheny County can increase legal mechanisms for intersectional equity at the county level. So we're looking at what is existing and doing research and analysis now to determine next steps. The other update I have is that we have been, like the Gender Equity Commission, working on bringing speakers from Allegheny County organizations whose interests are allied with the Pittsburgh and Allegheny for CEDAW group to our monthly meetings including agencies that already support the Allegheny for CDA effort. And I have a list of those that I will also include on the pittsburghforcda.org website. That's my report. Any questions?
Thank you so much. And it's so exciting to hear all of the work that's being done to bring this to the county level. And so thank you again for all your efforts. I am now going to turn it over to Commissioner Manuel, who is going to introduce our guest speakers for today.
Thank you so much. One, it is always good for the City of Pittsburgh Gender Equity Commission to expand their partnerships and join forces with others who are working in like-minded focus. And so the Workforce Equity Commission had the opportunity to be introduced to what I call two newfound friends and partners. And they are representatives from the Pennsylvania Coalition Against Domestic Violence. And so they have done a respective report on the gender pay gap. And they have been invited, and they have so graciously accepted the invite to come and share with my fellow commissioners, as well as any community members that are in attendance today, what their report has shown, and also, an abbreviation about a fact sheet. And so shortly after, I'll probably, more than likely put in the comments section the respective link, so that way everyone will have access to it. But without further ado, and I do not want to mispronounce names, so I'm going to ask our respective guests, Kristen and Ashwara, to just give their full name and what their respective position is for Pennsylvania Coalition Against Domestic Violence. But it gives me great pleasure to introduce to my fellow commissioners and to the respective committee members that are joining us to hear the exciting information that our new partners will be sharing with us. So without further ado, ladies, I'm going to turn it over to you, and welcome, and thank you so much for joining the City of Pittsburgh Gender Equity Commission today.
Great. Thanks so much for having us, Janet. Hi, everyone. I'll introduce myself quick and then let Ashwarya get us started. My name's Kristen Herman. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the Director of Prevention with the Pennsylvania Coalition Against Domestic Violence, or PCADV.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for having us. I'm Ashwarya Sinha, the Prevention Specialist at PCADV, and my pronouns are she, her, hers. And we're here, like Janet said, we are here to present our findings on our gender wage gap report. So this report came in existence because of funding through CDC. So through that funding, we started looking at strengthening economic supports. And through that, we decided to look at the wage gap in Pennsylvania. So our report sort of explores the wage gap, talks about the common myths, trends behind the wage gap, and it connects gender wage gap to our work, which is we talk about how it impacts a person's likelihood of experiencing risk factors for intimate partner violence. So we talk about how these connections might form in our report, and Kristen will go over that in the later part of the presentation. But we also do look at the potential action steps that could eliminate not only gender wage gap, but also intimate partner violence. So what we saw in that report is we saw in the United States, a woman who works full-time still earn 82 cents for every dollar earned by a man. And this difference between the median earnings of men and women, also known as the wage gap, translates to an average loss of $530,000, which is, oh my God, huge, over the course of a woman's lifetime. And Pennsylvania is no better off. right now with the new data, in Pennsylvania, women are earning 79 cents for every dollar a man gets, and the average median pay here for women employed in full-time year-round job is $41,000, whereas for white men it's $52,000. So that leads to an average loss of $10,000 per year for every employed woman. And this number is very different for women of color, which we explore in our report. And yeah, before doing that, I'll just get into the trends, the common myths that we found in our report. So what we saw is oftentimes there's a misconception that the wage gap can close if women take certain steps, if they get an advanced degree, if they change their jobs, if they get married. But it is important for us to remember that the wage gap is a systemic problem and not an individual choice. So it exists irrespective of an industry a woman is employed in, irrespective of whether they have a bachelor's degree or a PhD, irrespective of whether they're married or not, whether they have a child or not. Despite huge labor force participation increase among women, there still exists the gender wage gap. Despite women getting advanced degrees, there's still a wage gap. Women who have master's degrees still earn 72 cents for every dollar a man gets, irrespective of if he has a bachelor's degree or a master's degree. Even after getting a PhD, women's weekly earnings still stay above in the range of $1,000 to $1,200. Whereas men who get a bachelor's degree, their weekly earnings automatically rise to $1,400, which is, again, a huge gap when we see like the amount that accumulates all over the years. So these income disparities right from the start of a women's career create financial barriers, which sort of prevent and delay women from getting the same kind of economic stability or getting the same kind of independence that's available to their male counterparts. And our report also talked about the motherhood penalty. So that is basically like the cost a woman bears when she decides to have a child. And mothers are paid merely 71 cents for every dollar a father makes. And they're often viewed as incompetent. They're often offered lower starting salaries and are recommended for less hire than non-mothers. So that's one of the saddest parts. And we also discovered that the pay gap looks very different for women of color, and this gap is actually further widened for women of color who have to face the additional discrimination of racism, which brings about like further social and financial hindrances. And nationally, I think Black women earn close to 62 cents for every dollar a man earns, and Latinas hardly earn 54 cents for every dollar a white man. And basically, like, women of all major racial and ethnic groups earn less than men of the same group, as well as earn less than white non-Hispanic men. So this is even like hard for them, because they have to choose between their savings or getting access to financial opportunities, because the door is not as open for them as it is for a white man, because there's so many additional forms of oppression there are so many additional forms of barriers that are stopping them. So, and I'll now turn it over to Kristen to talk about these connections, how the other forms of oppression, and basically talk about some of our potential action steps that we could take to make pay equity a reality in our lifetime.
Thanks, Aishwarya. Yeah, so when we first started looking into this, there was hardly any information on pay inequities connection to domestic violence or DV, if there was a connection. So the way that we looked at it, because to us it made pretty good sense, is that pay inequity creates conditions And those conditions we know are risk factors for experiencing domestic violence. For example, poverty, individual poverty, neighborhood poverty and wealth, harmful gender norms, so who's valued, who's not valued, economic stress, housing insecurity. So for us, it's a clear connection to risk factors and preventing, someone's experience of IPV, but also it's connected in that pay inequity makes it a lot harder for people who are actively experiencing domestic or intimate partner violence to have options and to have agency and be able to leave that situation. So it really makes it challenging on both ends. And it makes sense when we talk about it and connect it to domestic violence, because what domestic violence is someone using behaviors to have power and control over someone else. And when we have pay inequity, we really have inequity in power, in agency, in access to resources and support. So, so that also makes a lot of sense there, and also brings in some of what Aishwarya was talking about with women of color experiencing larger gaps, and just anyone with an identity that's marginalized, and how the more of those identities that you add or identify with, the wider that gap gets and the more barriers there are that you have to face, or that someone would have to face. So some of the things that we are working on right now, we PCADV, are sharing our information, which we're very thrilled to come across the Gender Equity Commission. We're so excited that there are other people in Pennsylvania doing this work. We definitely did not want to reinvent the wheel or, start something separate when we could work together. So we're sort of in an information sharing, let's see what other folks are doing kind of phase. We are working on a prevention project for messaging work, and how can we talk about domestic violence in a way that folks understand and can relate to, because we're seeing that that's a pretty big disconnect for us. So I think also our pay equity work will blend nicely there and give us good tools to talk about pay equity, maybe in different ways. We're also working on building partnerships. So we're so happy to be partnering with all of you. We've also met with AAUW, Pennsylvania branch, and the Women's Commission. So we're sort of making our rounds. And yeah, in the future, I think we're looking to, where can we be allies in resource development, moving things policy-wise. We are seeing a lot of interest in training for employers, and also training about access to economic supports, TANF, SNAP, Earned Income Tax Credit, and getting that information so we're a coalition, so we have local programs across the state that do the direct service work. So getting the information to them to share with their communities. And I think the only other thing that we're looking toward in the future is to find or advocate for an increase in data. We didn't see a lot for women who also have disabilities, or for trans women in the pay equity research. So that's just sort of a quick list of what we're hoping to do. I think so far we've checked the report and some of the partnership boxes, but we're definitely a work in progress. But thank you so much for having us, and we're really excited to explore the possibilities.
Thank you. So I'm going to open it up to my fellow commissioners if they have any questions. Yes, Commissioner Rainey. And I believe Commissioner Hale will be next.
Thank you both for that presentation. It's wonderful to know that you're working on this, and I hadn't heard groups trying to make the connection between those two issues. So that's really helpful, and we really thank you for being with us, Janet. Thank you for arranging this presentation today. I'm assuming that you both probably know that the Gender Equity Commission did a report on Pittsburgh's inequality across gender and race, where we looked at poverty data. And I know you were looking statewide. Pittsburgh's data is even worse, of course, right? We found that that pay gap is even worse, and particularly for Black women who in Pittsburgh are only making 54 cents on the dollar. since we're particularly concerned here about the sort of hyper local, I'm curious if you could just say more about this connection that you're finding to intimate partner violence. Do you think that this is sort of a direct correlation? Are we going to see more of what you're finding in your report here in Pittsburgh because our numbers are so much worse really than the Pennsylvania state averages? And I appreciate having state averages, but I sometimes find they obscure more than they reveal when we've got some data like Pittsburgh's. So I'm just curious if you could tell us anything about Pittsburgh in particular. What did you find in your report, or what do you think we should know might be happening here based on what you're seeing with that data?
So I'm just gonna use my statistics class teaching, and I'm gonna say like correlation does not imply causation, but there is definitely there's definitely a connection. And I think with Pittsburgh, we saw it's sort of in the middle, and so being paid unequally can like lead to expose you to so many risk factors, like Kristen mentioned, poverty, housing insecurities, which in turn gives rise to these violence and these rates of abuse. So Pittsburgh is, I would say, it's not looking that good, but it's not also not that bad as compared to other counties that are also facing the additional burden of poverty. So they're from what I think we saw, like from the data we gathered, that's what we saw.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I would add that I don't know that you'll see more domestic violence, but I think definitely that you're saying that you're really relating and recognizing these conditions, that there's probably a pretty good chance that the stats that we see nationally for DV, so 1 in 3 folks experiencing domestic violence, that you most likely see that in your community too. It's hard because as little information as there is about pay inequity, there's even less about domestic violence, especially localized data. We just don't have it. So I think you're right on the money, to use maybe pun from today's presentation, to be thinking that way and about those conditions. Absolutely. We are working on a project that probably won't be done until July. That's a dashboard of different indicators of risk factors for IPV and looking at them across different counties across the state. And so pay inequity is one of those. And I know when we look at, we had drafted this table. So when we look at median household income by race, ethnicity, and if we just go by Black people in Allegheny County, you're absolutely right. What we see is 59%, that their income is at 59% of a white family's household. And that's an entire family we're taking into consideration, not just women.
My question was a small point of clarification for one of the last things you said before Jesse's question, Commissioner Ramey's question. You had said you're looking to increase your information on trans women, and was it also on LGBTQIA plus folks? Or I missed
women, I'm sorry. Also, hey, Judy, women with disabilities.
Thank you. Okay, women with disabilities and trans women. Thank you. I thought I had missed something. Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from my fellow commissioners for our guests? If not, again, I want to say thank you so much for coming and speaking to my fellow commissioners, as well as to the community attendees that are watching and listening. I look forward to our partnership. To my fellow commissioners, stay tuned. This is not the last time that you will see them or hear from them. We, the Workforce Equity Committee, has committed to Kristen and Aishwarya that we will be following up with them on how we can continue to make that connection and work not only on the focus that the City of Pittsburgh GEC has, but then also what can we do to help support what the Pennsylvania Domestic Coalition Against Violence is doing as well. So again, thank you so much for attending. This will not be your last time being invited. Commissioners, this will not be your last time hearing from them. But I just want to thank both of them for at short notice saying, yes, we're coming. We don't mind sharing our report and sharing what their focus actually is. And it's nice to, again, have that partnership to work with someone else from a like-mindedness as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Janet. I want to, again, on behalf of the commission, I want to thank you both for coming and also just say how nice it is to see people working in different areas, focusing on this issue so that more people understand that the gender wage gap, as you noted in your presentation, is cross-cutting, and there's so many different factors. And so it, you know, I know that we would love to see more organizations and more people from diverse backgrounds and diverse focuses paying attention to this issue and caring about this widespread problem. So very exciting to see your organization doing this work from your focus. Janet, again, thank you so much for bringing this and for spurring this partnership. Really looking forward to seeing what comes out of this relationship. So thank you all for being here. Much appreciated.
Thank you for having us, and thanks for all the work that you've done. We've definitely learned a lot from you as well.
Thanks.
Thank you. So we have Lindsay Powell here with us today. Excuse me, assistant to the chief of staff. Is that correct?
If you watch The Office, it's one of those assistant to the regional manager, assistant regional manager. It's one of those.
Well, Lindsay, thank you so much for being here. Lindsay is going to give us some really important policy updates. So I will turn it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chairwoman Lindsay Powell. If I haven't met you already, Assistant Chief of Staff, and I run the policy shop here in the Mayor's office. And as Anu has left, has been working with Amanda to ensure that any of the policy priorities that you're working on still stay afloat in this transition. And I just wanted to share some updates from the office and appreciate this commission giving me some space to talk a little bit about them. And as always, happy to take questions or answer concerns as well. So some big ones that I know folks on this commission are well aware as they were at council meetings, providing public comment, but bereavement loss, a huge piece of legislation from Councilman Bobby Wilson passed unanimously by City Council, passed a few weeks back. Essentially for city employees, it would allow for paid time off for any type of pregnancy loss for the person experiencing the pregnancy, as well as other affected family members. And so another really important piece of legislation in my mind to ensure that we're looking at people holistically here and not just for their ability to produce and be quote unquote solely an employee. So that passed a few weeks back. In addition, as a part of the American Rescue Plan, there was funding that went towards a guaranteed basic income pilot. A guaranteed basic income pilot that would be targeted specifically for creating more opportunities for Black women. It's the first, at this point in time, the first and only program in the country to do something like this. And the reason the guaranteed basic income pilot was created that way was on the recommendations of the Gender Equity Commission from specifically the report that you all put together during COVID recommendations to ensure that we're addressing the unique needs that women are facing during this pandemic. And so the program will have participants from some of our most under-resourced, underserved zip codes within the city. It will have an experimental group and a control group. The experimental group will be receiving the $500 a month, and that is a unrestricted amount of funding to ensure that, you know, people are able to utilize assistance in a way, in my mind, that is dignified. You know, and I don't need to preach to the choir here, and I don't want to take up too much of your time, but we all know how restrictive government programs can be. They don't, again, speak to people fully. We know that they don't provide a lot of agency and dignity. And so there's been a push across the country and nationally to really think about what an unrestricted monthly stipend looks like. And again, we would be the first and the only city that is gearing our guaranteed basic income pilot towards Black women. So again, $500 a month, unrestricted, and we're working with research providers at Penn State, at University of Pennsylvania, excuse me, to do the research for us. So, you know, the idea overall would be that we have a product really to show how well this works. We've joined as a city with the Mayors for Guaranteed Basic Income, and the cohort of 30 some odd mayors across the country will be producing this research in order to push the federal government to create more programs like this and loosen the restraints on government funding. Another update for this body and for those watching would be that our Emergency Rental Assistance Program, ERAP, which has funding from the city and county, is very successfully, very quickly spending down our first round of COVID relief funding. And so there was a kind of chunk of funding that went to the city and county for rent relief back in 2020. Federal government quickly realized that was not enough money. And so in that first round of funding, the city was given $8.9 million and given up until September 2021 to spend it down. And we have spent it down, which is one, good that we're able to get that money out, but B, also very terrifying thinking about all the other people that are continuing to apply for this funding and waiting to get it. And so I wanted to make sure that folks, again, on this call and listening in, were aware that that program is up and running. We have, like I said, another round of funding from the city and county that Action Housing is administering on our behalf. We have, from the calls that I get on at the federal level with the White House, talking to other cities around the country, we have one of the best programs. We've been able to mitigate some of the barriers that other cities are seeing. And basically, if you are eligible or receiving WIC, TANF, whatever, you get like basically a speed pass through the application, which is what we're trying to push other cities to do. And I say that to say, while you know, this program is one of the best in the country, it is still you know, we're still trying to get through the queue. And so there are folks who have applied and are still waiting to hear back. But we are working really quickly with the county and Action to make sure that funding gets out to the people who need it the most. And we know, again, that this pandemic is adversely affecting women and women of color. And then lastly, quick little bit, but our Quality Childcare Fund, it's a $2 million fund. And I'm sure you know, Anu and other folks who've been you know, from the city representatives have spoken about it before, but it is finally up and running. We are taking applications, and the first chunk of money has gone out to childcare centers across the city. As a reminder, the childcare fund is to ensure that for childcare providers and daycare centers, that they are able to get grant funding to move up in the Quality Star program. One fact about our childcare system here in the city is that I think it's less than 20%. I think it's specifically 18% of our childcare programs are deemed as high quality. So high stars, I think that's the 4-star, which again means that almost 80% of families and young people are going to childcare providers that aren't the best that they could be. This funding, again, is to help them either improve their physical space. So whether that's building an addition, building a little library nook, a reading room, or even buying materials and supplies for the actual centers, as well as helping some of the providers get additional certifications and training to ensure that they're getting able to give the best care possible is all eligible uses of the funding. So those are some, I think, big four policy legislative updates from the mayor's office. And I'm happy to stop talking finally and let people ask some questions.
Lindsay, thank you so much. Commissioners, questions, comments? We have Lindsay with us.
Good afternoon, Chief Powell. I hope you're doing well. I did have a question about the guaranteed basic, the universal basic income rollout and how, excuse me, communities will be engaged. I know that there can be a lot of, like, is this real, or confusion, or just throwing the mail away? And so wondering if there has already been a plan. I know this just passed, but if there's a plan, and also if not, if there's any, or if there could be any thoughts around how to engage some community organizations that might have already been involved with the community members that could help get folks signed up.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mrs. Lyon. That is a great question. So the tricky part about this pilot, in my mind, is that in order to have and the folks in academia, please jump in if I'm using the wrong words, but in order to make sure that there is fidelity to the actual experiment, it has to be randomized. And so if you're engaging like community organizations trying to ensure that certain populations are getting hear about it or know that this is happening, it kind of skews our ability to show objectively that this intervention works in this way. We have a, which I actually think if you're interested, would love to make her available to you as a resource, but Michelle Abbott has been at the helm of, we're calling it ACE PGH. We love to add a PGH in back of everything, but it's the acronym that we're using for GBI here. But she has been running it and working to ensure that we have a randomized system. I think the other thing too that I didn't add, but I think that is of interest to this body, is that we've worked out with the county agreements to ensure that if someone was to receive the stipend, the $500 a month, they wouldn't be pushed off of any existing benefits that they have, which has been critical. You don't want to, you want to ensure that, by using this intervention, that it pushes them off their ability to stay in their housing, to get SNAP or what have you. And so that's also a big piece of this, is that, if you are selected randomly for this program, you wouldn't have to give up any of your benefits. But to your original point, we have steered away from community, engaging community organizations because it will skew the data, but would love to see in the future if there is a way that we can utilize community organizations to support those who are participating in the program.
I happen to have my notes, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I happen to have my notes in front of me from my briefing with Michelle Abbott, Lindsay. And so there's going to be 200 participants, if I'm not mistaken. Half of them will be selected, not randomized, but are already existing participants in the financial empowerment program.
Yes.
And those are the participants, the 100 participants that will be Black women.
No, so it's
understood.
the folks who are within the FECs, the financial empowerment centers, those will not be randomized. Those are anyone. The ones who are
receiving, they're not the randomized ones,
are Black.
And the other 100 are the randomized, stratified sampling from 5 of our poorest neighborhoods. And so it's a stratified random sampling, so that each of the 5 neighborhoods will be randomly sampled within, so that you get a distribution across the 5 of the poorest neighborhoods. And those will be the anonymously randomized households, or not Black women. So the Black women participants are coming from the financial empowerment.
No, so you have it opposite. So the ones who are receiving the intervention, the $500 from the most underserved zip codes within our communities are Black women, the FECs, the people who are, the 100 people who are within our financial empowerment centers. Those will be folks who are engaging with our financial empowerment centers. So the money is going to Black women.
And then additionally, there will be, definitely not what my notes say, and that there's additionally a control group of 200 households that will be kind of surveyed that will not be receiving the cash benefit, so that there will be a compare and contrast. So it's actually a very nice and experimental structure to the study. So I don't mean to add confusion, but I'll follow up and double check my notes.
I'm happy to, if this is of interest, I'm happy to either connect you to Michelle Abbott, who's running the program, or send you an overview, just so that the Gender Equity Commission has some type of like briefing so that you're able to view that as well.
Thank you so much, Lindsay. Does anybody else? Oh, I see Commissioner Ramey has a question.
Lindsay, thank you again. I cannot emphasize what a big win this is for Pittsburgh to get this here, and your work is just tremendous. Thank you so much for updating us on that. I'm really excited that this connects back to the work that this commission did. I'm really proud of that. I hope we're all collectively proud of that. So really, thank you so much for that. And I too am really interested in sort of these research questions and would love to learn more. So I just put that out there. I think given the work that this commission did in putting together our recommendations around basic income, we know that there was a lot of pre-existing research that demonstrated the efficacy of these programs. So I guess I just have questions. I would love to know more about what are the research questions. We already know it works. So are we asking questions like, does it work? We already know it works. We already know a lot about how these work. So I hope that we can learn more. And I just want to thank you again. I think that's really exciting. And all of the other policy things you just presented to us are big wins, and you've had such a hand in those. So thank you, Lindsay, for all the work you've been doing.
I appreciate it, Dr. Ramey. It's definitely been a team effort over here. With the guaranteed basic income, I remember when we had this conversation in 2020, it was one of those things, I believe I sat down with Anu and it was like, we want to do this. Where the money comes from, we have no idea. And as we were approached by Mayor Tubbs in Stockton, California, who was the first mayor to have a guaranteed basic income program and start a coalition of mayors and try and find funding to do some of the research and some of the kind of other infrastructure needs that had a cost that cities, immediately weren't able to take on. Definitely use the research and the queries that the Gender Equity Commission had made throughout the pandemic and beforehand to inform this work. So I am, as folks are interested in the kind of researchy academia part of this, I'm happy to again get either Michelle, if you would like, or Oliver Beasley, who's been honestly leading this work from day one. So happy to make ourselves available in whatever way you need.
And it sounds like that there are definitely some more questions and of course, great interest given the GEC's work in these areas. And so Chief Powell, what I'd like to do is work with you to create a mechanism for commissioners to follow up directly, so that those questions can be answered and we can find a way to capture that, even outside of today's meeting, because there is great interest and clearly great support for this work. And, we want to make sure that we're helpful and as involved as it makes sense to be. So I look forward to working with you to find a way to make sure that commissioners are engaged and ask those important questions. And so, we'll figure that out moving forward, certainly. Anyone else briefly before we let Chief Powell go and get through the rest of our agenda? But we'll make sure that we do follow up with Chief Powell and get your questions answered. And so we'll get that mechanism in place.
Sounds good. I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you so much for being here with us. Thank you for those policy updates. Very exciting stuff, right, everyone? I kind of wish my screen, I kind of wish I didn't look so terrible so I could like show you how excited I am, even though I don't sound like it.
I feel it through the screen. You're good. Thank you all so much. Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you so much. Okay, on that note, so I'm going to kind of take us back to some of the new business. So Chief Powell just shared with us the really exciting news about the bereavement bill put forward by Counselor Bobby Wilson. As you know, myself and Commissioner Overton gave public comments as ourselves, as individuals, not speaking on behalf of the commission, as we did alert you to. However, for those of you who were able to listen or to watch, I did mention our work, as many others have referenced our work as they present, not to mention that when the bill was presented, Counselor Wilson did reference the work of the Gender Equity Commission. So very exciting stuff. The most important to me, the most important pieces to share with you outside of the great news that Chief Powell shared with us is, number one, Counselor Wilson and his staff definitely thanked the Gender Equity Commission for their steadfast work, not only for the report and the important work that has been supported as a result of that report, but also shared a great interest in wanting to work more closely with the Gender Equity Commission outside of reading the reports and recommendations that we put out. So I had a very good conversation with him, and he shared a desire to meet with us to talk further and to forge a relationship with the Gender Equity Commission moving forward on identifying possible recommendations, and also too, moving forward with making sure the bill does what they intend it to do. Also, one piece that you may not be privy to, but that was part of Counselor Strasburger requested to sign on as a co-sponsor of the bill. So that was very exciting. And so, we have, of course, our resident council person, Deb Gross, who is here with us. And so, we have the important work that she has done with us. And it's exciting to see other members of council who are not necessarily in meeting and doing the work with us every single month take an interest in wanting to be more intentional about reaching out to us and forging those relationships. It is certainly my hope, and I know that all of you share this desire to see legislators that impact the city of Pittsburgh be more intentional about reaching out to us and utilize the incredible expertise on this commission. So I'm very excited about that, and what that can mean for us moving forward. So I and the executive committee will make sure that we keep you all abreast of what that will look like. Yes, Commissioner Gross.
Thank you. Thank you. I wanted to add that it might be something that we want to help amplify in our newsletter or website at the GEC to get the word out to childcare operators. So the pot of money that Chief Powell was talking about was set aside by the four women on City Council and the capital budget. And my rusty old person memory, it was about 2017. And so it's great to see that come online. But in the meanwhile, there was also a pot of $250,000 that we transferred to the URA right before COVID. We didn't know COVID was going to happen in December of 2019. And then COVID did happen, and the URA was struggling to do outreach to small businesses and was approached by PNC to give them $10 million to do small business work. And when PNC saw the child care lending that URA had started with this parallel pot of funds, they matched it with 1.5 million. So there's the $2 million grant program that Chief Powell was talking about that's out of the mayor's office. And then there's a parallel track of nearly 2 million that's also being expended by the URA. And they're kind of coming together to coordinate I think there was a press release today that like $300,000 has gone out the door to about 11 childcare operators. But there's, you know, a lot of funds, and hopefully some more of them will reach the small operators that I think are important to bring into the system, that are reaching some of our most underserved neighborhoods, don't have the big centers. And so there's just a lot of opportunity here, and I think we can help amplify those programs. So again, wonderful, wonderful kind of sympathetic concerns, policy concerns that support the work of the Gender Equity Commission.
Thank you very much. Both very good points, and good to really hear about again, seeing and hearing that there are so many more organizations that are getting on board with supporting this important work. I agree with you that we need to find a way to amplify. As you know, we're a little behind right now with some of our administrative support, but we're working on getting that done so that we can be quicker with resurfacing the newsletter and updating the website. But in the meantime, and perhaps the mayor's office or council, et cetera, if they can get the word out while we, work on, getting our administrative work together.
Sorry, Commissioner Neutral. I haven't done it either, but it's on my list of things to do. I mean, and well, much time, right? It takes a long time to move nearly $4 million.
Absolutely.
We have to do this week, but we want to make sure that we find the child care centers who need the support. So
absolutely. And like you said, we need to get the word out. As Commissioner Coffey mentioned during the comments, we need to make sure the community gets that word out. And so again, I appreciate you bringing those points up. So at the very least, we can use our platform to get the word out for those who are watching. Quickly moving forward. So Vibrant Pittsburgh is hosting a virtual regional economic inclusion summit on October 13th from 9 to 4 p.m. There's a session that I have been invited to speak on, and that session is looking at gender equity and intersectionality, improving outcomes for Black women in Pittsburgh. So I just wanted to let you all know that they have asked me to come and speak about the work of the commission and the work that we have done, the impact of COVID, et cetera. So I will make sure to keep you all in the loop as we move forward. But it is, October 13th, Vibrant Pittsburgh, I believe it's the REI Summit. So I will, again, send that information out to you all as we move forward. But I wanted to let you all know about that. Any other new business before we move to, yes, Commissioner Ramey.
I know we're way over time, so maybe we have to go back to having our 2-hour meetings. I don't know. It's hard to get everything in. So perhaps this is just a request that we could talk about this next month, but I just wanted to mention that stunning lending report that came out this month on the disparities in lending to Black Pittsburghers and white Pittsburghers in particular. And I was just noticing in that data set that it is not disaggregated by gender. So I wondered if we might have a conversation or just discuss that. There are implications for some of the public data that was used, and I'd love to talk about if that data is disaggregated, or maybe there's some ways that the commission could be involved in some follow-up questions for that report. Probably everybody here saw, really stunning and very important findings. And then I also think that there are some potential policy implications, particularly for how the city keeps its money. That was one of the recommendations from that report. So I wondered if we might want to engage in some of that policy discussion next month.
I think that's a good idea. Also, in the interest of keeping things moving, I wonder, and neither Commissioners Hanson or Higginbotham are here, but it sounds like something perhaps maybe the Gender Analysis Committee might want to take a look at, even in considering, like you said, the research implications, the policy recommendations, et cetera, and maybe helping us get started on that. It's something I just want to throw that out there again. We don't have either co-chairs here, and I'm not sure what the workload looks like, but it's something to consider. In the meantime, but I think certainly, Commissioner Ramey, that is something that we can talk about and should talk about, and perhaps even think about who maybe we could invite as a special guest to talk about the implications of lending and looking at the intersection of race and gender and even other intersections. So taking it a step further and not just us talking about it, but if having a report out on those implications and how they impact Pittsburghers intersectionally. So thank you for bringing that forward. And I definitely think that's something that's worth taking a look at. I did see the report. So thank you for bringing that up. Anyone else? And again, to be clear, it was a suggestion. If the Gender Analysis Committee doesn't feel that it's appropriate, you don't have to take it up. It's just a suggestion. Okay, if no one else has anything regarding old business, we already heard from Commissioner Coffey that we will have a report out of the findings from the Governance and Leadership Committee on the retreat and the notes that were taken. So that will occur regarding an executive director or an interim individual to take us out for the rest of the year. Unfortunately, the individual who we were looking to bring on ended up not being eligible due to residency concerns. So we are still looking, as I mentioned. I know that Commissioner Corbel had someone, Commissioner Hansen just reached out to me and had someone who was interested. And so the ongoing news of looking for someone to provide that administrative support. So if anyone is interested in working with the Gender Equity Commission through the rest of 2021, we are looking for an interim executive director. It is a paid position. So there is money in the budget for that. So please take a look. I believe the job is posted, if I'm not mistaken. I believe that is it for now. Again, anyone is interested in taking minutes for the October meeting, let me know. Anyone else have anything? I do not believe we have anyone for public comments. Is that correct, Heather? Is there anybody in the queue waiting for public comments? Or are we good to go? Or Alex?
No, there's no one here.
Okay, perfect. Okay. Well, with that said, everyone, thank you so much for being here. I know today was a little challenging given the absences. There is definitely something going around. A number of people are very sick, including myself, which again is why I am not showing my face. But I do want to thank you all for being here, for your work. Again, thank you, Commissioner Hale, for taking notes for today's meeting. Really appreciate it. Thank you all for the thoughtful conversation. Thank you to Heather and Alex and the team for stepping in and helping us through this meeting today. Thank you for everyone for tuning in and watching and being with us. And thank you for your patience as we have transitioned to not having an executive director. We, as soon as we are able to, we will go back to, getting, information out to the public on how they can join, public comment, and getting updates, et cetera. In the meantime, the best way to learn about what we're doing will be to join us every third Tuesday of the month at 4 o'clock. But again, thank you for your patience, and also thank you to our presenters today for that really great presentation and incredible information, and to Commissioner Manuel for making that connection. Do I have a motion to adjourn today's meeting?
I make a motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you, everyone. I will see you next month. Thank you for your continued work and for a great meeting.